Welcome back to another edition of Music Monday from the podcast Nurture the Mind. I am your host, Cole Poots, and we have yet again another music reaction. And I feel like almost every week it's a first on this channel. This is the first time, believe it or not, that I have reviewed this band, these musicians, these artists on my channel. It is one of my favorite bands of all time. They are definitely in my top 5. It is none other than A Day to Remember. And they just dropped an album on Friday, March 21st, my fucking birthday. I turned 28, and this is one of the best presents that I could have ever received. It's the Big Ole Album Volume 1, and it's crazy. So I've listened to almost the entire album except the last song, Closer Than You Think. I saved that. I wanted that last one for this reaction, and I will tell you, so far I have really enjoyed this album. This is their 8th LP as a band, which is crazy. Like, I started listening to these guys back in, I think it was 2010, 2011. Like, the first song that I ever heard was All I Want off of What Separates Me From You. And then it was really like the summer of 2011 is when I just started like going through all of their shit, going through that entire album that I just mentioned, What Separates Me From You, then going to Homesick, then going to For Those Who Have a Heart, and then their name was Treason, the EP that they put out, Attack of the Killer B-Sides or whatever. And it was like 2011, that summer, they were solidified as one of my favorite bands of all time. And then just ever since then, just waiting for every album to drop, getting Common Courtesy. I always tell people that this band had one of the greatest 3 album stretches of all time of any artist, musician, band, group I have ever seen. When they went Homesick, What Separates Me From You, and Common Courtesy, that 3 album stretch. Homesick was 2009. What Separates Me From You was 2010. Common Courtesy was 2013. This is one of the best 3 album stretches I've seen of all time, all across the board, any genre. And then, they went Bad Vibrations, which was, where they really kind of started to alter their sound a little bit in a direction that a lot of A Day to Remember fans don't really care for. There's still a lot of good songs on that specific project. And then in 2021, they dropped You're Welcome. A lot of people were not a fan of that album because, again, they're just going in this different sound, a little bit more, a little bit more mainstream, I guess you could say. I still think, again, there's bangers on that album. I don't entirely hate it, but in their entire discography amongst their fan base, that's probably a lot of people's least favorite album. But now we are here at Big Ole Album Volume 1. And I would say from all the songs that I've listened to so far, like I said, I got the last one on the album, Closer Than You Think, for the reaction. I've liked every song except Feedback, which was, I think, the second single that was released for this album, because you had Miracle, that was back in 2022. Then we had Feedback, which was 2024. And then they dropped, not that long ago, they did 2 other singles, Make It Make Sense and LeBron. Every song on this album, other than Feedback, has been good so far. So I'm intrigued to see what the closer track is and what it offers. It's actually the longest track on the album at 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Some of my favorite moments on this album is track number 4, All My Friends. I also really liked Flowers, track number 6. Miracle, to me, is still a fucking banger, even, 3 years later. Silence is an interesting track. That's the one right before the closer, and it sounds a lot like the band Gojira. Especially the vocals on that track sound like Gojira. So I just, even if these guys have a bad album or, albums that don't live up to their previous albums, they're always going to hold a special place in my heart. There's always a special place in my heart that is reserved for this group. And it just sounds like so far on this album, they're getting back to having fun. You know, they're embracing the critics on this album. They address that in some songs. There's heavier tracks on here. They're kind of doing everything, and that's kind of always been a day to remember, is they've always done a bunch of different genres and sounds, and they're still testing things out even all these years later. You know, they've been a band for so long. They've been through so much together with Victory Records and trying to get off of that label, and, you know, the dispute that they had to go to. And then their bass player, Joshua Woodard, and didn't he have like some sexual allegations or something that were brought up against him? So he removed himself from the band, whatever year that was, and ever since then they were looking for a bass player, which since I think they have found somebody. At least like when I watch some of their live shows, they have a guy that comes on and performs with them. I don't know if he's like actually in the band or like their full-time bass player, but they've just been through so much, and yet here they are in 2025, you know, still making music, still giving us music. And I watched a podcast interview that Jeremy McKinnon did with Nick Nocturnal on YouTube, and Jeremy was saying, you know, hinting at the title that is considered Volume 1, they actually have quite a few songs that are ready for Volume 2. So who knows? Maybe in the span of the next year, maybe we'll get another project. I have no idea. But yeah, so far I have really enjoyed this project. And so I am very hyped to listen to this last song, Closer Than You Think. So let's get into it. I've already done too much talking. We can save some more talking on the back end. For the purpose of this reaction, we're going to bring up the official audio. It's kind of like a visual, I guess you could say, video on YouTube, but it's just audio. It's not like an actual music video or anything. So yeah, man, let's get into it. I like it already. Fuck. I got goosebumps. Jeremy McKinnon, your vocals are so crisp. Jesus, dude. It's the strangest thing. I knew the day would come, but it's like a tidal wave. No, there's nothing quite like the first time your heart breaks. Ain't that the truth? I think this might be the best song off the album. Like, this is how you close an album. This is a proper way to send it off. Strategically placed in the track list by A Day to Remember. You had to close with this song. There's no other options. They didn't intend for this maybe, but it sounds very spiritual and very like religious-esque. Like just the feeling that it elicits as you're listening to it. All right, guys, there it is. Closer Than You Think. A Day to Remember. Big Ole Album, Volume 1. Yeah, that was incredible. That was very heartfelt. I didn't get all of the lyrics, but I do think I got just enough. You know, he said something in the beginning about being in this room for days, something about throwing this old key away. Your heart is in pain. You know, you can put that on me. Something to the effect. I'm probably butchering the lyrics just a little bit, but that was so heartfelt. That was so emotional. It feels kind of like the older A Day to Remember that I grew up on, that we are all accustomed to as fans of A Day to Remember. It's unfortunate that people will always kind of go back to those previous albums and demand, hey guys, like, can you make sounds like that once again? It's like, in the end, like, they have all the authority and all of the autonomy in the world to make whatever type of music they want to make. You know, we're probably never going to get a Homesick again. We're never going to get a What Separates Me From You again, or a Common Courtesy. And I'm glad that we're not, because those exist in that space and time for a reason. Like, you can always go back and listen to and replay those projects. I commend these guys, even if, you know, some of their newer stuff has not really pulled at my heartstrings. It does feel like they are kind of rebounding on this project. That is an emotional closer. He says there's a light up ahead. I can't remember if he said at the end of the tunnel or something like that, but he's like, there's this light that's up ahead and it's closer than you think. And that was probably the most gut-wrenching line in the entire song. What it made me think of is direct correlation to my life. I try to keep it honest with you guys. I try and be authentic as I possibly can on here, genuine as I possibly can, and tell you like the real raw details of my life. And I'll be honest, I don't know how transparent or how much I've talked about it in recent memory on this channel, but January, February, and a little bit of March were very tough months for me mentally. It kind of felt 50-50. A lot of the time. I attribute a lot of it to just like going through winter, especially here in Iowa in the Midwest, and just not getting vitamin D, not getting exposed to that sunlight as much as you should as a human. You know, most of the days in the winter are just like very dark and depressing. But I had some life events that happened to me. I lost my therapist that I was working with since 2019. And her and I were just very close. I mean, we had like a professional relationship, but she was just a great therapist and was such a big support system for me, ever since I met her back in 2019. And then I've just had other things going on, like in my personal life and my work life, and just kind of questioning my direction in life. Like, should I stick to doing personal training, or should I go on and do something else? And like, these are not easy questions to answer. So it's been, a time of just a lot of like internal conflict, a lot of like internal war, like me fighting with myself, my previous issues with mental health of just like overthinking, OCD, getting a little bit anxious, getting a little bit riled up. Like, I'm the type of person that really tries to control all different aspects of my life, and it's just really not healthy for the human experience because I can't control everything. There's certain things that I can control, but I try and place too much emphasis and control on my life. And so by Jeremy like saying that line, dude, it almost makes you want to cry. I'm surprised that I didn't cry during that song, but it's like, I think for us humans, like, we're gonna go through many, many, many moments throughout the course of our lives where we're fighting, where we're struggling, where we're going over these hurdles, where life is a challenge. And like, sometimes it's gonna look dark and the future is not going to look very bright. You're gonna be like way too hard on yourself, like I am towards myself. That just happens. That's just the nature of life. That's always been the common theme in my life, but also the common theme on the other side of it is I always find a way to get out of it. And then there's a period in time that's like very prosperous. It's almost like if you're willing to pay attention to these natural patterns and cycles inside of life, you'll start to understand maybe this is what humans are meant to go through. Because usually what is followed after a period of significant struggle, usually once you get through that, then all of a sudden, like, you have more confidence, your self-esteem is better, you have more self-belief, you know that you can get through hard situations, and you change as a result. I think it's something that is like unavoidable in life. It's something that all of us humans have to go through, and it's not that we just go through it once. We go through that period that I just talked about many, 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 many times throughout the course of our lives, because life is beautiful. There's endless amounts of beauty and joy, but there is a lot of pain. There is a lot of suffering. It's part of the fact that, if you're religious or if you're like a spiritual person like I am, I operate inside of both of those domains, especially from a religious perspective. For Christians, they say like that is what we have signed up for, because we are part flesh, but we are also part soul, because we are on this earth and we are imperfect in nature. That's part of the experience that we signed up for, is like, it's gonna be hard too. It's not just gonna be easy. It's not just gonna flourish. Like, life is difficult. And I think anybody who's gone through life and is of the appropriate age and has had to go through some hardship, like, they will tell you that. But we have to reframe our perspective on those things, because it is not a bad thing if you learn from it, if you grow from it, if you are able to burn and stand in the fire. There's like some type of quote that exists out there that's like, the longer that you stay in the ashes, or the longer that you're able to withstand the burn, the more refined you become once it's all over. And I truly do believe that we kind of have to, it's also, the old adage of pressure formulates diamonds. Sometimes when we're under immense pressure in life, that actually nets and yields the best results possible. Some people crumble under pressure, and other people use it as a motivating source. There have been times where I've been in both spaces, but after going through a lot of these challenges, like losing my therapist and all the other previous stuff that I mentioned these last few months, I do feel like when I got into March, that was when the veil like started to lift a little bit, and I could see things a lot more clearly. So now I'm at a point where I'm like, I have this understanding just turning 28 is that like we can't run from these things. When these things happen, you must fully embrace it. You must fully go through it. The only way to to get through something is to literally go through it, not try and jump over it, not suppress your feelings. That was the hardest part in these last few months, losing my therapist and then just feeling like my inner circle was depleted and was not there for me. Like I couldn't go to these people. It just felt like everything was sitting inside of my brain and was just collecting dust and space and just making me continue to overthink even more. And so that's why I'm trying to, it's partly what the reaction pulled out of me today, but I'm also trying to be very honest with you guys. Like you, especially for men, I think in this day and age where we're afraid, still very afraid to open up and be vulnerable and like talk about these things. I'm not saying you should do it all the time. There's a time and a place for it, but that, if you don't, that is why men at a tremendous clip are the ones that are committing the most suicides in the world, in the country. So like as men, like we have to talk about these things. You have to find your inner circle. But getting back to my original point, that line that Jeremy said, there's a light up ahead at the end of the tunnel or something, and it's closer than you think. It's tested and it's true in my life and probably for a lot of other people. Is you could be sitting in that dark place. You could be struggling. You could be going through those challenges and it's rough. Like acknowledge that, like tap into your feelings, tap into your emotions, like allow yourself to feel them, because it does suck, but it is ultimately the thing that you have to do to like set yourself free. And doing that, you are a lot closer than you think to getting out of it, to getting out of the thick of the mud. But a lot of times in life, we as humans, we overcomplicate things and we make it tremendously worse. I just love that line. I think it brings so much clarity to my life. I think for anybody listening, you could listen to that line and say, oh my God, like Jeremy is speaking to me as well. That pertains to my life and what I'm going through, because part of the human experience is that we all have struggles. We all have things that we go through consistently throughout the course of our lives. So that line right there, the whole song is great, but to me, that's the biggest highlight on the track. And like I said earlier, like that's how you close an album. A track like that, man, just like super emotional. I can't say enough good things about this project. I can't say enough good things about this band. Like I said, I don't care if they've had some dud albums. I don't care if like sonically they went in a different direction post Common Courtesy. They have the power and the authority and the decision making to ultimately do that, and we can't fault them for it, even if it doesn't sound like their older stuff. Makes sense, right? Like they are not they're not their old selves, so they're not gonna try and recreate and make a Homesick Part 2. Maybe they'll do that at some point. I wouldn't rule that out, but I think it's kind of a far cry. Like for any artist, for any musician, for any band, for any group, I've said this all the time, and I am firmly rooted in this belief when it comes to music, is that I always encourage these artists to grow and to make different projects. Like I don't want them to make the same thing that they've already made, because it's not gonna have the same impact, because we've already heard Homesick. So why do you want a Homesick Part 2? Yeah, it'd be cool to hear some songs that kind of sound like Homesick, because that's like, personally one of my favorite albums that they ever put out. But like we should be encouraging artists to grow, to transform, to try out different things. Part of creativity is exploration, creating things out of thin air. And the problem with that is that sometimes it's going to be a home run, but also a lot of creativity falls flat on its face, and I commend these guys. I commend anybody that's in the public eye like that. When you're putting out a project, you're putting out something, you're making yourself vulnerable, because now people are going to consume it and they're either going to love it, they're either going to bop it, sing along, bounce their heads, or they are going to criticize, they are going to judge, they are going to cast stones. So they've been doing this for a long time. I'm sure some of those things do get to them and they might take a little bit personally, but I mean, for as long as they've been a band, like, they've probably heard all those things. They've heard all the criticisms, you know, all of the comments. You, like, if you're in that space, like, you have to develop having thicker, tougher skin. I'm not even on the level of A Day to Remember, right? But like on my YouTube channel, like, finally getting over 1,000 subscribers. Now I'm at 1.54 or something like that, 1,540. I think that's what it would be. You know, I've seen negative comments. I've seen people criticize me on YouTube. Like, that's just part of the territory. Like, if you're going to put yourself out there and you want to get eyeballs on you, that is part of the game. You have to accept that. But yeah, that's basically all I have to say. I thought so far, after listening to this once, I'm going to have to give it some more listens. The entire project, I think so far it's been great. Like I said, the only song that I really didn't care for was Feedback. Everything else was good, you know? Everything else sounded pretty good. I have my more favorite tracks on the album, but that closing track, Closer Than You Think, was a hit. It hit me in my emotions. It hit me in my feels. So anyways, guys, that is the reaction. That is the review. As always, I ask that if you've come over here, if you've enjoyed this, if you like my content, if you thought I did a good job, can you please do 4 things? You don't have to do all 4, but please do one of the 4 things. Number 1 would be subscribe to the channel. Number 2 would be to like the video. Number 3 would be to comment in the comment section below. And number 4 would be to share this content, whether it is on your social media or if you talk about it with an individual in real life, in person. By doing one of those 4 things, you really help grow my channel, get more eyeballs over here, more clicks. And I'm asking you to do it. It's like an exchange type of thing. Like, if I did a good job, if it was entertaining, if you enjoyed it, if it wasn't a waste of your time, please do me a solid. I'm the one that created this. You do me a solid and you just spread the information. That's all that I ask. And I think that's a fair exchange. So thank you guys for coming over. As always, man, enjoyed the experience. This was great. Love this album so far. Gonna have to listen to it a few more times just to get the true feel, but everything has sounded really good, and it makes me happy as a massive A Day to Remember fan. So thank you guys. I will see you on the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.